The original unedited preface of American Cosmic by D.W. Pasulka. A tour of Silicon Valley with Jacques Vallee. These are the hills of Silicon Valley. There are many secrets in this valley. Jacques Vallee maneuvers his car through San Francisco Bay Area traffic, darting this way and that. From the back seat, I look ahead and see large trucks and small cars barreling toward us, but Jacques avoids potential direct hits. This aspect of the Bay Area, its traffic, is something I don't miss about my original hometown. Jacques is driving me and a friend from Big Sur up and down the cliff-littered Highway 101 and over the infamously deadly Highway 17. Despite the chaotic traffic, I'm focused on the conversation. A founder of the modern study of UFOs and one of the early visionaries of the internet, Dr. Jacques Vallee, who is an astronomer and a computer scientist, is giving us a personal tour of his favorite town, Silicon Valley. Jacques' life work focuses on two things with which I am obsessed: technology and UFOs. We drive by locations that were important to the history of the valley. Jacques points to a building that housed the birth of an important startup, one that would eventually form part of Google. His enthusiasm is palpable. He recalls the early days of the technology revolution. They were on fire and democratic, pure scientists, fueled by discovery. Jacques is very tall, with penetrating blue eyes. His credentials are impressive, even intimidating. As an astronomer, he helped NASA create a detailed map of Mars. As a computer scientist with a PhD from Northwestern University, he was among the early engineers of ARPANET, the Advanced Research Project Agency's network, a precursor to the Internet. He has written numerous books about technology and is also a successful venture capitalist, funding innovative technology startups. In a word, he is prolific. In 1968, Jacques wrote Passport to Magonia, a book that details how the UFO phenomena shares patterns with folklore about fairies and with events from the history of religion. It is considered a definitive book in the field of ufology, the study of UFOs. As a young author, he was awarded France's prestigious Jules Verne Award for his first science fiction novel. He is also known for being a consultant to Steven Spielberg on the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Spielberg based the scientist character in the movie, played by French director François Truffaut, on Vallee. Jacques' work goes a long way in defining the field of ufology, and yet he calls the study of UFOs his hobby. All of this is just the orthodox history of Jacques' life and work. His unorthodox history is even more interesting. He worked with scientists affiliated with the Stanford Research Institute, an independent nonprofit research institute in Menlo Park, which is now SRI International. Today, the group's activities are largely unknown to the public. Yet, documents from the 1970s and 80s indicate that it was a research site for the extraordinary. Jacques did his work on the fledgling internet there, under a program that, as Jeffrey Kripal writes, was probably called augmentation of the human intellect. Before cognitive scientists and philosophers wrote about extended cognition in the 1990s, the United States military, through groups like SRI, was already involved in experiments to extend the mind in tangible ways. The internet was conceived of just such an extension. Strangely, this research was being conducted at the same time, in the same place, and at the same institute as the study of remote viewing, precognition, and extrasensory perception. In this approach to extended cognition, the mind seemed able to be extended beyond the boundaries of the Earth and even the solar system. These strange skills were developed under a then classified program called Project Stargate. Its intention was to develop the skills and talents of people who were allegedly naturally psychic for the purposes of gathering intelligence to support national security. However, During their research, some of the psychic viewers reported uncovering unintended and surprising targets, like UFOs. The participants in the program also reported that they could travel through space to the moon and to other planets like Mars. In other words, the program developed, intentionally or not, psychic cosmonauts. Probably unknown to Jacques and researchers at the SRI, traveling to other planets through one's mind had already been done. Although it has not been a common practice, alleged psychic cosmonauts like mathematician Emanuel Swedenborg have existed throughout history. Swedenborg was a brilliant 18th century contemporary of philosopher Immanuel Kant, who wrote a book about him. In the second half of his life, Swedenborg experienced the presence of what he believed was an angel. The angel guided him through the afterlife and also to planets in our solar system. Swedenborg claimed to visit Mercury, Mars, Venus, and the Moon. He reported that he spoke to beings on these planets. In 1758, he wrote a book called Life on Other Planets, and the book is still popular. Recently, a member of the International Society of Krishna Consciousness disparages modern attempts at space travel, suggesting that travel of the human physical body through space to other planets is inefficient. Why not travel there through one's mind, they ask. One author, writing in the 1960s, argued that yogis have been traveling to planets near and far for thousands of years, and that the gross materialists of contemporary science are misguided in their attempts to travel physically to these worlds. While the activities of the cosmonauts of the SRI may have resembled the interstellar adventures of Swedenborg and the practitioners of Krishna consciousness, their goals could not have been more different. Their intention was to operationalize the knowledge they acquired about primarily terrestrial targets, so remote viewing was one of many methods of data collection. In any case, these human portals to other planets were being developed under the same auspices and at the same time as technologies of connectivity like the internet. As we spun down the highway, I recognized the neighborhoods of my early childhood, but I saw them now through Jacques' eyes. The streets, the smell of the eucalyptus trees, parks, schools, cafes, all looked new to me, shining with the allure of mystery. The dot-com revolution was, in anyone's estimation, an exciting economic development, but I was now being offered a glimpse into why it was dubbed a revolution. Jacques reminded me that the technologies that were birthed in this valley were truly new. He said that here in this valley was the world of the future. Jacques' history, including his work with the mysterious SRI and his comments to me, indicated that there was more to the story than just a game-changing technological innovation. As much as I wanted to, I never did ask him what he meant by his statement, "the secrets of Silicon Valley." As anyone who has met Jacques will attest, his personal presence demands a certain respect, which I've always observed. I also intuited that the answer to that question was not obvious, but during the car ride, I caught a glimpse into the exciting ideology, the philosophy behind the revolution. My research focus had prepared me to meet Jacques. I am a professor of religious studies and a student of philosophy. I also spent the first part of my graduate education in the Valley in the late 1990s. My research focused on, among other things, extraordinary aerial phenomena from the Catholic tradition, which were not called UFOs, but souls from purgatory, flying houses, and angels. At the same time I studied these manuscripts, I also witnessed the creation of the increasingly digital and technological infrastructure of our new world. Alongside my studies in Catholicism, I also read the works of scholars of technology like Marshall McLuhan, philosopher Martin Heidegger, and Jean Baudrillard. Heidegger's philosophy struck me as particularly relevant to the work that Jacques was doing. In 1954, Heidegger wrote The Question Concerning Technology. Back then, it was a challenging read, and frankly, it is still hard to read. However, it does offer several observations about the relationship between humans and technology. The essay is based on a series of lectures that Heidegger gave in the German city of Bremen in 1949. Heidegger's lecture style was Socratic in that he took his students on a journey via questions. It was through questioning, he said, that one could come to some form of understanding. He wrote, "In what follows, we shall be questioning concerning technology. Questioning builds a way. We would be advised, therefore, above all, to pay heed to the way and not to fix our attention on isolated sentences and topics." Significantly, Heidegger establishes a method which leads with questioning without drawing conclusions. He said that this is important when considering the new era in which humans would be living, the era of technology. We generally assume that technology is a neutral object that we can use for something. It is useful. We are not wrong about that. But Heidegger thought that the technology of his future, which is our present, would be more than that, something that would reveal a new way to live. He saw in it both danger and a new way. Heidegger's essay challenges its readers to leave aside the view of technology as an instrument and as mythologically or mysteriously formed, and asks its readers instead to grasp technology's import and influence, which is why his essay reminds me of the work of Jacques. Jacques is fully aware of the revolution that is technology. Although he had most likely never read the essay, his description of Silicon Valley as the home of the new resonates with Heidegger's assessment of technology as a new era of human experience that frames a new epoch. As I met the scientists who studied UFOs, I came to recognize that they were utilizing Heidegger's method. I am certain that none of them had read Heidegger's essay. They studied the topic without forming any hard conclusions, and all of them engaged in an almost mystical relationship with the topic. These methods were not just a collection of beliefs. Beliefs and visions imply something intangible, things that exist on the level of the imaginary. Yet Jacques' imaginings, and those of many in the valley, are tangible physical realities. They take the form of apps, phones, GPS, and mind-computer interfaces that infiltrate human bodies, influencing how we think and live. This is more than an ideology or a philosophy. This, in part, is what American Cosmic is about. It is about the connections between belief in UFOs and technology, but it is also about the processes of translation. That is, the translation of imagined technologies into tangible realities. I found that, just as was the case with the SRI in the 1970s, in the midst of technological development were parallel developments that involved the mind and secular forms of mysticism. At this interface, I found the belief in non-human technological intelligence, sometimes known as UFOs. I also found that to understand and move beyond a myth, one must first enter into it. In the course of my explorations in the field, I entered directly into the myth of the UFO as technological non-human intelligence. A major theme within UFO folklore is the theory, dubbed a conspiracy by many, that the creation of some advanced technologies has been accomplished by secret or black programs within the government that acquired a crashed alien spacecraft in 1947 and have reverse engineered its technology. The most famous advocate for this theory was Colonel Philip Corso, whose book The Day After Roswell appeared on the New York Times bestseller list for weeks. Corso claimed that it was his task as a secret agent to seed private industry with specimens of a crashed alien craft, and to lie to the engineers and tell them that the artifacts were Russian and Chinese technology. Their task, then, was to reverse engineer what they believed was foreign but terrestrial technology. Despite its status as a fringe and far-out theory, the underlying assumptions are that an alien spacecraft functions in ways that are similar to, though more advanced than our own technologies, and engineers just need to crack that code. As I progressed with my research, I met a contemporary version of Colonel Corso and other scientists who believed they were involved in reverse engineering. The world I had entered was different from what I expected. Many of the scientists did not think they were working with nuts and bolts metals. Whereas Corso said that he was given orders by his superiors to carry out his tasks, the contemporary version of Corso engaged in an elaborate process that involved qualities that are not generally associated with science and technology, like mental and bodily states, morality, and non-ordinary modes of perception. In a word, mysticism. In the 1970s, when Jacques consulted for Steven Spielberg on the movie Close Encounters, he encouraged the director to portray the more complex version of UFOs. That is, that the phenomena is complex and might not be extraterrestrial at all. But according to Jacques, Spielberg went with the simple story, the one everybody would understand. American Cosmic does not tell the simple story, but I believe it is a story everyone can understand. At the end of the car ride through the valley, Jacques dropped me off in San Francisco, where my brother had been waiting in his car to take me home. The city's tall buildings gleamed, shiny in the San Francisco sun. We got out of the car and stretched. Jacques rummaged through the back of his car and finally came up with several of his books, which he then signed and presented to me. I thanked him and I stepped into my brother's car. Then Jacques came around to my window and knocked. I rolled down the window. "I forgot this book," he said. "It's fiction. You must read it." It was a copy of his novel, Stratagem. I put it on top of the pile. I would read it first. My brother looked at Jacques and then at me and laughed. "I can't wait to hear about this one," he said.